Welcome back to the Business Simple podcast. It's your host, James. Today, I have Aidan Smith from Workride with me. Aidan is someone who came in to do some filming with us probably about a month ago would have been the first one. And he was so good that Luke mentioned to me afterwards that we had to have him on the podcast. He's got an awesome product and I'm really excited to hear his story. Thank you for taking the time.
Awesome. Thanks, James.
No worries. So where we kind of start with all of this, and maybe actually we should do this a little bit different for you because Workride is quite a unique.
Very.
Yeah. Can you walk us through, I suppose maybe first, what Workride is, maybe even how you came up with the idea for it, and then we'll jump into a bit of your story afterwards, if that's okay?
Sounds good. Yeah, Workride's New Zealand's Ride to Work benefit program. We effectively allow employees to reduce their pre-tax pay in what's called a salary sacrifice to select a e-bike for their commute. And what's typically done is, an employee's wanting to get a bike or e-bike, they're reducing their salary, they're swapping what would normally have been paid through their tax income and now repackaging it into their salary. And so the easy way to think about it is sometimes you get a car as part of your employment arrangement. What you're doing for a 12-month period with Workride is getting a bike, but that bike is of your choice from whatever shop you want. And the cool thing about that is the employer is the one that's effectively paying for it. And since they're paying for it, it's happening pre-tax. And so you're reducing your taxable salary, you're getting that bike that you've decided from whatever shop, and you've done it in a way that is really tax efficient. So instead of having to go out to a shop and use what money is in your bank account to pay for it, you've done it through a pre-tax salary sacrifice. And so Workride enables a compliant way to have that happen for your employer. And we carry, I guess, all the administration and hassle through a software platform to make it really easy. So through a few clicks of a button, your employer can administer and basically do this program, and it's completely free for your employer to do. So instead of employers having to pay for benefits that they offer their staff, which is kind of the typical thing in the market, we actually say, hey, this is a free benefit program, come and use this, and we get our revenue from other means through the retail partners. So
yeah, right. Okay. And so as an employer, you're essentially just like buying something, claiming tax, claiming GST, and then passing that saving on to the employee. Is that right? Because they get the bike cheaper too.
Yeah, it's a little bit simpler than that. So what we're doing is we're providing what would normally be a CapEx, so what an employer would have to go out and normally purchase, we turn it into a benefit service. Right. So it's an OPEX. So we're actually providing a full service to that employer. They're paying us a service fee, which is equal to the cost of the bike, because we have to go out and buy that bike and provide it to the employee. And the outcome of that is the employer's basically using company funds, but those company funds are then recovered through a salary sacrifice that the employee takes on board. Right. So they're reducing, using an example is really easy. Yeah. Say an employee, John, has an $80,000 salary. They want a $5,000 bike. Across that next year, they agree to reduce their cash salary to $75,000, but then they're provided with a $5,000 bike. Yeah. Now, if they were to go out and buy that $5,000 bike privately, to actually have $5,000 in your bank account, you might have to earn $7,500, $8,000 pre-tax on your salary. And so what we're doing is allowing that employee to basically reduce that pre-tax value and receive that bike benefit that they want to commute to and from work. So it's a really good thing for business because retaining your staff for 12 months and you're providing like a health and well-being and sustainability benefit. That's actually really cool.
That is wicked. I mean, I know one of my staff had presented me the idea. That was kind of how we first started talking, exactly. But I didn't actually understand that was how it worked. Yeah. I thought it was you just go and buy the bike and then claim tax and stuff, and like the government will flick you some GST back on it, and not at all. Yeah, it's a lot cleaner, and that service fee model's smart. That makes so much sense from a compliance perspective.
Like from what we've experienced is employers want the benefit, so they want the output, but they don't want all the hassle, administration, and liability. And they're happy to facilitate it. So doing 1 to 2 minute tasks to basically facilitate it. But they don't want to go out and take on the liability, run all the contracts, run the process, having to set up their own internal processes. They want to click a button and make sure they're all compliant. And since it's happening pre-tax, Inland Revenue is really interested in it. And so we had to go through about a 11 month process with Inland Revenue to actually get New Zealand's first approval for a pre-tax salary sacrifice program to actually provide this to employers because they need that reassurance that it's compliant. Because whether you get or whether Inland Revenue determines that there's tax owed or not, it might be this year, it might be next year, or it might be in the future. No matter what, if they all of a sudden determine there's some sort of tax owed, all of a sudden you'll have to pay that and any interest that's accrued.
Yeah.
And so what's really important is compliance for employers. And so that's what we do. We make sure they're compliant.
That is really clever. Because I suppose you could also wind up in this bit where you go, although I suppose when because you used the company vehicle analogy earlier, like a company vehicle might be worth 10 grand a year or 15 grand a year or whatever, but the employee doesn't then pay tax on that 10 or 15 grand. So you kind of are, I suppose, just the same as that. That'd be how you'd think about it.
Yeah, there's analogous kind of things that could look similar. I guess the legislation is really specific around what can actually occur pre-tax. So we don't use the word loopholes by any means. We work with legislation, and the legislation that has been implemented, and we can get to that soon, is around making a fairer tax system. So there's exemptions in place from fringe benefit tax for car parks, motor vehicles like utes and things. You always see people sign-ridden utes. They get to use that in their own time. There's fringe benefit tax that gets paid there, but there's also exempt activities. Car parks is another one, and then public transport is something that we're also looking into soon, and then bikes and e-bikes is another thing. And so all we're doing is basically providing a compliant process, and that's really streamlined and easy for employers to access and offer the benefit to their staff without any of the hassle.
Yeah, wow. Okay. You're obviously not like old. You know a lot about this, but like how do you wind up in this spot at your age, running this company, you're getting things approved by the IRS? Like what's that been like?
Yeah, I've probably know more about tax than I'd ever thought I'd ever known. No, but my background's in mechanical engineering. We're problem solvers. Myself and my business partner have worked together for like the last 10 years, met at university doing a university project, developing race cars basically, which was, it's epic. You're applying your engineering skills to a real world physical application, which was cool. Across the next 5 years, we developed technology for the likes of Google. Basically, think of zip lines that went around corners. It's kind of weird. Tension line. So you've got a zip line, tension cable, transitions to a rail system, then back onto a cable. So that was pretty epic. And we then transferred that into a transport system. So like think a gondola, but actually the cable's not moving. So it's the trolley or the vehicle is moving on the cable. And so we did that for about 4 or 5 years together. And then there was always that itch to think, what's next? What do we want to do? And where we ended up was basically testing a whole lot of ideas. And, I don't know where I read it, but 9 out of 10 businesses fail within that first year or two. And so we thought, okay, if we try 10 things, one of them will work, right? And it's
such a logical way to think about it.
So that's the engineer, right? That's the engineer in me is thinking, like, statistically, this one failed. We're closer. We're better. And so, we tried a whole heap of things. And one of the first businesses that we really spent some time in, like probably 10 to 12 months, was called Shuttle. And that was something that, we did a mind map of like, what do we actually enjoy? Where do our skills actually lie? And this is me and my business partner, Connor. In preface to this, he's like the smartest person I've ever met. We don't need a clone, we need a counterbalance. And so we build, like we're very well balanced with our skills. We're both engineers, both can like look at things with a rational and logical way. But we've got other skills and passions that kind of elevate us to kind of be a one-stop shop almost. And so we're looking at ideas, and we landed on this business model that worked really well over in Europe. And something that we're seeing at the moment is the transition to more active commuting. And something that we're passionate about is cycling. Mountain biking for one, but also, I bike to work every day, one, because it's incidental exercise. It's great just to get some fresh air, and I turn up fresher, and I'm like, well, what happens if we can provide this to as many people as possible? What does that model look like? And so over in Europe, there's multiple different companies that provide bikes on a lease or subscription arrangement.
Mm-hmm.
And so removing the barrier of ownership and actually saying, if you pay us a weekly fee for shuttle is $39 a week, and we provided you with an e-bike, and that e-bike was fully maintained, you could cancel within a four-week period. And so it was pretty epic. And we're like, okay, this is sweet. We went out, did some market research, tested a few things, ran some ads, seemed like there was some pretty good interest on it. And we're like, we're just gonna have to give it a go. And so in Christchurch, good biking city, we went out and bought 20 e-bikes and branded them up, made like a website, kind of went through that journey, did some software platform stuff, and just made it really easy for people, and set up a Stripe account, set up some subscriptions, and all of a sudden people started signing up. And so I think it took, maybe like 2-3 months to basically get 20 people on board to get those bikes out. And all of a sudden, we're like, okay, this seems like it's somewhat working. Like, it's hard. Like, people were having to clue people up, and people didn't really, people were like, oh, can we get this bike or that bike? I'm like, actually, no, it's just this bike, and you have to use this. And so we were going through that, and
it's kind of like Lime, but it's yours, right?
Your Lime, but you get to keep it, and you get to live it in your garage. And so we're doing this e-bike subscription service, and like the long and short of what was, we grew it to about 140 bikes in Christchurch. It took about a year. Yeah. We're like, man, this is hard.
Yeah,
like,
right.
Man, this seems way harder than what it should be. Like, there's like over 100 bikes out. Why isn't there more interest in this? And so we started doing a bit of like more customer research, more understanding those that are on the bike. Why are you using it? And like initially they'd say, oh, like, we're really interested in your service, sweet as, like, that's great. And then we started asking the people that were leaving, like kind of churning, so leaving the service, like, why are you leaving? Like, oh, well, I qualified that I wanted an e-bike. I'm just going to go buy one now. Yeah. And we're like, okay, we're basically providing equipment, like expensive assets for people to just trial a bike, not actually capturing a huge amount of value. And then they're saying, hey, we've had enough of your service. It's been great, but we've now qualified that we want a bike. Yeah. And so they've then gone into the bike shop, and the bike shop's capturing value from that. Yeah, right. And so all of a sudden we're like, oh, well, Kiwis are still Kiwis, right? Yeah. They want to own stuff. They don't want to rent stuff. They don't want to lease, like in a subscription model where they can see that amount trickling down. They'd rather go out and spend a huge amount and then just have that go out at once and just sit in the garage. Yeah. All well and good. And so we got to the point where like, well, that business model doesn't work. But what we...
Just before you move on, because I'm so interested in this. So what were the e-bikes costing you, and what were you renting them out per week?
Yeah, those e-bikes were about two and a bit grand each. Yeah. About $2,000 each, and we're renting them out for about $40 a week. And so across the year, we should see that full return. There's a whole lot of cost in terms of like maintenance going out and just like overheads. And so at scale, there is a model there because we're basing it off European programs and European offerings, and we're like, look, they make it work. We started talking to them, looking at supplying bikes, different sorts of bikes, etc. But the long and short of it was, we kind of started to understand that Kiwis specifically are ingrained in this idea of owning stuff and not paying for like the lease fees and the subscription arrangement.
Because you even look at like vehicle leasing and it virtually doesn't exist. Yeah. Whereas there are other places where it would be like half of all vehicle sales would be to lease companies. That then, so it is just a Kiwi thing, I think.
I think it's like something to that. Like, from a company's perspective, leasing is massive. But from a personal perspective, it's not so much. And I think what we've seen internationally is there are reasons why they're a little bit more ingrained from a personal kind of consumer standpoint from a lease, and that might be because there's tax incentives or there's reasons why that can happen, whether it's packaging it into your own salary or something like that. Not quite there in New Zealand yet. That's something that we're definitely looking into, but there's always an incentive of why a certain behavior or habit is occurring. Cool. But maybe back to like getting those bikes, understanding, learning about Kiwis didn't want these. It's like, well, we actually started discovering that businesses wanted these bikes for their staff as a benefit. Yeah. And we're like, fantastic. This is a great channel to like spend a little bit of effort getting that business on board, and then all of a sudden they can offer these bikes to their staff. This is going to be really high impact. Yeah. This is going to be great. But then what we found we came up against was a thing called fringe benefit tax, which when you provide a benefit outside of cash remuneration, you have to pay a tax that's owed because you're basically giving that employee value that's not taxed, that they're using personally. And so we're like, that seems silly. And across the world, there's exemptions in place that allow a very fair tax system to allow certain exemptions that cause certain habits that allow the employer to provide. Yeah. And so in Europe and the UK, there's exemptions in place for employer-provided bikes.
Yeah.
And we're like,
which I think makes a lot of sense, right?
It does. Yeah.
Yeah. Because like, especially when you think about the amount we spend on cycleways and stuff like that, it's like get the people using them and get stuff, you know?
For sure, get the people using them. And I think from a standpoint in New Zealand, the reason why that legislation went through was to create a fairer tax system. Like like a great principle in any first world country's tax system is fair. Yeah, like that's really important. And so creating exemptions that are fair around how and supporting employees to get to and from work, whether it's public transport, a bike, a car park if they need to drive in themselves, fantastic. This is a tool to allow that employer to support their staff for effectively getting to work. Yeah, that's great. So a fair tax system, and so having that exemption in place would be great. And so we kind of advocated on that. Obviously, there's those benefits that are really obvious around sustainability, health and well-being. You know, these programs are really well developed in the UK, and any dollar that's put in, I think it's, you know, saves $2.50 in the health system in the UK.
Yeah, right.
Which is incredible. It's like, okay, that's massive impact. But subject to that, like forgetting that, we advocated, we got about 400 or 500 letters of support from businesses around the country, just saying, hey, like if this was in place, would you support it? Like if this is something that's good for New Zealand. My business partner Connor went and presented at Parliament, basically got some ministers on board to say this is actually a good thing, got a supplementary order, which is a step when you're actually changing the law. And in March, Connor got a phone call from the minister to say, wouldn't believe it, but guess what happened? Legislation's going to go through. Like, congrats, like, you know, this is really awesome.
Yeah, wow.
And so the outcome of that was like, wow, we've got this business that all of a sudden we've reduced a barrier. Is this business the best thing to actually use this exemption, or is there a better way to actually use this exemption? And so as more daylight occurred around what that legislation looked like, we started to realize that actually this is really complicated for employers to use. And there is an awesome benefit that can be provided, but there needs to be a third party to externalize all the risk and manage that fully managed program to just make it hassle-free. Like, we think click of a button is what the employer want to do, and they get the output.
And so much of business decisions come down to ease. Like so much more than people would think. And you'd think, because it's like business owners, people are like, oh, they'd be really thoughtful and they'd be this and blah, blah. But like the amount of times we're about to like go ahead with a client or something, and like, how much time is this going to take us? Like, that's the big question. They don't care about the number on the proposal.
Time poor.
Like,
Everyone's time poor.
Yeah, what do you need from me to make sure? Basically, the question we get asked is like, how little can I give you for how much of an outcome is possible? And I think that's the same problem you're trying to solve here, exactly right?
Yeah. And what we tend to say is they get all the output, all the benefit for none of the hassle. You know, that is the dream setup. If anything was free and they can have that, like, what's the barriers? Like, why and what's stopping them doing it? And it's more just an understanding of how the program works, because it's new to New Zealand. So,
Are you like, do you ever have those sort of moments like you guys put together a bill and got it passed through Parliament and got tax law changed, and you know, it's reasonable. It has an impact on like that. There's a gravitational like
there will
pulse that comes off the back of that where things change forever.
Totally. And I think maybe not yet. We haven't really, like, we try reflect in the wins, but I guess like when you're running the race, like winners don't look back, right? You don't check where your competition is, or you don't check where things are at. You just, you know what that next goal is, and you keep walking forward. And that's maybe detrimental to a certain extent, but it's something that I think we can reflect and think in 10 years' time, whether we're doing this business or not, whether it's operating, whatever's happening to it, we can probably say like, we actually made that happen, or we were pretty influential in making that happen. And the output of that is happier and healthier Kiwis, that have used the system. They're using the infrastructure that is here. And one thing that I always say is, every person out of a car onto a bike means whoever's wanting to drive a car, they get there quicker, less congestion. So whether you're someone that hates cyclists or not, it doesn't actually matter to you. You're going to get there quicker. So, props to the people getting out on a bike and doing that.
Yeah, and there's no, you don't lose. No one loses.
No.
Yeah, which is really cool. So your transition between Shuttle and Workride, were there other businesses in the middle of that, or was it pretty much just...
Not at all. Exactly. So March 2023, we got that phone call from the minister, or Connor did, and all of a sudden we kind of had talked about it in November, December the year before to say, hey, if this actually goes through, we think there's something here. There's really strong businesses that are built around these exemptions. They are complicated. What they're doing, you have to have a lot of trust. You have to build that employer network. And once you're ingrained into the employer network, it's all about trust. And so we had kind of put a plan together. Not a business case or anything silly like that. It's just a plan together on a Miro board, which is an online whiteboard, and just said, we'll park it. But it's there. We've done some thinking of it. It's one of those thinkings that you do over a beer and you kind of rattle it through. And then all of a sudden, we can actually do this. And we're like, oh, well, we've got this other baby that we've been building, but it's been tough. What are we going to do? And everyone loves a pivot, the word. Pivot. And it's not that you're just shutting down one business and starting a new one. All we're doing was we're just changing the tack of the sales, right? We've still had momentum going forward, but all of a sudden we could, start winding down one through basically selling down those bikes. And what an awesome way. We just reached out to our whole client base and said, hey, do you want your bike? And, we're going to allow you to have it for a very, very low cost because we just need to focus on this new business. And, you've done good by us and you've invested basically time and effort into us and we want to basically give back. And so, you can have this bike for this amount. We didn't make any money. We just wanted to get rid of that, wanted to make sure our existing customers had an awesome experience. We told them about what we're up to in our next business, and they're really excited about it. And they're like, hey, if you can talk to your employer about what we're going to do, because we're a firm believer of, to build trust, you tell people what you're going to do and you deliver. And so if you're doing that on a scale of over 100 people working at different organizations, all of a sudden people are like, oh, there's going to be this awesome benefit program that we're going to be able to save 32 to 63% off whatever bike we want. And people are like, that's never happened before. It can't happen. But then when you go back in 6 months' time and you've worked through that, got IRD approval about to happen, they're like, actually, there might be something here. You'll get those early adopters that all of a sudden said, yep, we've seen you and you've kept us in touch. You've had that communication throughout that whole period, convincing us that it's going to be a thing. And now it is a thing. Now we're interested. How can we get involved? Can we do one? Can we just test it out? And so that transition was pretty smooth, I would say. Pivoting isn't always easy, I don't think.
Sometimes the smallest changes are the hard ones, eh? That's something that I've been thinking about a lot recently, is where as we've had a few, I suppose you call them admin-y people leave the business, where I kind of had this similar thing where I'm like, let's go real delivery person heavy and just have make our client to staff, delivery staff member ratio just ridiculous. So everyone just has the most incredible product on the planet, an ads person per 8 to 12 clients. So they're spending huge amounts of time on them and that sort of thing. And the numbers kind of work. That transition that we're going through at the moment appears to be easier than changing a Monday board. It's so interesting. Is sometimes the small stuff really trips you up, and then you make this big monstrous decision and you go down this completely new path, and you're like, that's probably easier than some of the little 100%. Ones.
It just made sense though. The writing was on the wall. What we're doing. When something's hard, you have to look back at the evidence or the facts and why is it hard? We did collect feedback, we did go through surveys, and we kind of validated that what we're doing and the reason why people are actually using our service isn't for the problem that we're solving. And we weren't, and like the facts were almost, it's not the Achilles heel, but it was like the obvious thing. And we're just kind of like saying, oh, that's not what's actually happening. That's not what's actually happening. And then the writing was on the wall and we actually had to face the facts. And it was just lucky we had this thing to transition into, because we would have had to get to that decision, whether it was because of this new opportunity, like we would have came to the same kind of outcome, I believe, no matter what. Like it would have been a hard fought journey, and I hope that we would have decided basically, as soon as possible. But there was just this, like almost, just this epiphany almost, like this, just the timing of it was impeccable. And we knew there was this almost struggling to grow business. We're like, this is hard. And we're like, oh my God, there's this new golden child, this awesome opportunity. Let's just wind down one and just go all in on the other.
So something I think about a lot though, and this may be something that you and I'd imagine Connor's very like you as well, you guys probably don't give yourselves enough credit for, is it is hard to remain optimistic. And you only find the opportunities in optimism. Like that's the only reason why you could see it, is because you guys were so sold on the mission and you were so focused forwards that the current position you were in that wasn't perfect didn't put you off, where a lot of people would have gone, nah, there's just nothing in this whole bike tax thing. We made some progress, but it's just not the answer. It's too hard moving. You guys still had the ability to be like, but what if we did it this way?
And say.
And I think that is probably something that I've noticed a lot of the people come on here and they sort of almost use this, like, I joke all the time with the guys in here where I've got like, fingers crossed the marketing gods will smile on us on this one. And because a lot of what we do is like you hit and hope, right? And it's the same, I think, with business. You sort of take a massive swing and you just hope there's a connection. That's the biggest thing. But with business, when there's a connection, it can be not for like 1 point or 2 points. There can be a connection for 1,000 points when you come onto the right idea. So I think you guys probably just owe yourselves a little bit of credit for like, it's hard to pivot. It's hard to have the, I don't know what the word I'm looking for is, but like the ability to go, this idea that I've poured a lot of time into and I've told people about and that I've been really proud of, I'm binning it. And it's hard to know that everyone's sort of like, oh, they were on, they thought they were onto one, and and like all of that takes a huge amount of humility. I think is probably the word. And willingness to be wrong. Because of that, you get this cool thing that comes out the other side. So it's earned, rather than being like something that kind of smacked you guys in the face. It's
and that's 100%. I don't think we would be in the position that we were in if we hadn't gone down that path. I'm a firm believer in the act of doing. Will just pop up opportunities. And in one thing from a previous employer, like he always talked around like eyes wide open, not being so stuck up in your ego that you're not open to new opportunities or a better way of doing something. Because if everyone was stuck in their way around how they're doing something, then no progress would ever happen. The idea of progress is just taking the best bits and keep merging them together to actually progress forward and whatever it is, like that's that there, and just kind of having that realization that we had to pivot, and there is a better opportunity, and almost have to not kind of reaffirm with those people that were like, what you're doing isn't going to work, but it's actually like, there's just a better opportunity. I'm sure someone would be able to make that other business work.
Maybe you could. You just don't know. Like, if you'd stuck with it, maybe it would have been okay. You just don't know.
It's just a different business. Totally.
And there's also something that's really nice about the fact that you'll never know the alternatives. That's what I like about big decisions. So I'm like, the good thing about it is once it's made, you're in. Like you're pot committed. It's like a poker. Like once the chips are in, at some point in time, you just have to shove on the river.
It's burning. It's literally burning the bridges. And I think there's times where throughout what we've done of late, like a good example is we've just migrated like a software platform from one to the other, and the boys had been spending they spent 4 months on it. And there's a point of no return. Literally, you burn the bridges and anything moving forward, and you go through this massive testing plan, and they have tested everything, but there's a point of actually no return. and all of a sudden people are now using the new software, the updated platform, and if there's any errors or anything, like you can't go back.
No.
The bridges have been burnt, everything's migrated, and so you're just like, you just have to step forward. And so
yeah, it's a fun game, eh?
I love it.
Game. So how do you wind up going from this like mechanical engineer to like, what was it about business that drew you and Connor in?
Yeah, I think we've always wanted to do more. Like one thing, from a really young age, I don't know what it is, but I used to go around and sell chocolates for fundraising. And like, this is a bit of a weird tangent, but from a young age, I really just got something out of selling something to people and saw the value of doing that and telling the story, taking people on the journey, whether it's selling chocolates for fundraising. You're at front of someone's house and you're saying, hey, no, this is for me to get up to Rotorua. I'm on a plane, like there's costs involved with that. And you're basically selling people the story. They want the chocolate anyway, but they didn't buy it because they wanted the chocolate. They bought it probably because you're standing in front of them saying for a good reason. And there was just that like underlying urge of, I love engineering. I love tackling difficult problems and building stuff and seeing real world kind of progress. But there was something around the ultimate game is business. It's like getting people to use your service or product, making them feel like there's value in doing that. And somewhere along the line, somehow you're making some margin. It might not have to be from that direct user or the decision maker. It might be from the consumer of it. But somewhere along the line, there's a really strategic play. It's like the ultimate game. And so, I love playing games and I love doing that. And so why couldn't we do that during the day-to-day? And like, as an engineer, we're doing some awesome projects, like working on like world-changing technology. And it's like a dream job. Like it was a dream job, and
I was thinking it sounds awesome.
It is. It's fantastic. Like traveling the world, going overseas, working for these big companies, doing really cool stuff. And there was always the itch being like, we're doing cool stuff, but someone else is making money out of this. And like the fact of the matter is like, it would be a very comfortable life as an engineer, I think. Like, and there's nothing wrong with that. But I just wanted to scratch that itch. I wanted to know if now, when, and so just dive straight in. And it was one of those things like we left employment. Both Connor and I worked at the same company. We both left employment, and people always ask like, "What are you going to do?" Like, they knew that we've been kind of working on something in the background, and we're like, "Oh, we got some ideas, but we actually had nothing like absolutely robust." But the act of actually just stepping away, giving yourself the time to actually go all in, you're either going to sink or swim, right? You've only got a certain amount of savings left, and you're just going to kind of basically dwindle those down until hopefully you find something that hits. And it was just the act of doing that. We spent months just trying to find an opportunity, and that was Shuttle, to give that a go. But the transition it was just like we just had to give it a go. We had to try.
And sometimes I think you need a nudge. Like when I left my job prior to starting Digital Simple, I didn't know that I was starting Digital Simple when I handed in my resignation. I actually had no idea. I knew that I had to go, and there was a few different reasons for that, but I knew that I had to go, so I resigned. And then I was just having a coffee with someone. They're like, "Why don't you do this for yourself?" Like I was looking at using you guys, and it was just because of you. I didn't care about what the company was, and so I would still use you if it was you. They were like, "Just go." And then I had another conversation with someone. They're like, "Well, where are you going? Because we're coming with you." And I was like, And then I was kind of like, okay, well, maybe I could have a crack. And I was sort of like, how do I get my hands on 10 grand so I can go buy a laptop and cover my rent for a wee bit, and then I'll just go for it. Like that was, which once again, it's that I think once the bridges are burnt, that's the big thing, right? Is like once you're out there, the hard bit is making the call,
it's the comfortable. It's like being comfortable. It's so easy to have that reassurance of like, you're going to get paid this no matter what. If you get sick or if there's anything, you're going to get paid this. But I don't think it's like burning the bridges in that, because you're obviously skilled, and so if the worst thing happened, you just go get a job.
Yeah, and I think For sure, right?
Yeah,
Like the bridges aren't even that burnt. I think about this all the time, and
Yeah.
I would be earing towards unemployable, but I'm not. Like if everything went wrong and I needed to pay rent or mortgage or whatever, like I'd go work for someone. It would be
there's
like,
nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
I think that there is a small percentage of humans though that, and I do think it's a small percentage that comfort irritates them. And I think the majority of humans are driven towards it. And I think you look at general human behavior and it's all aligned with comfort, right? Comfort, security, consistency, all of those sorts of things.
It all trends to that naturally. That's what people trend to.
Even my fiance is, and so imagine like us as a dynamic where I'm like, the one thing I hate is consistency. Like I want constant challenges and probably not as big as some of the ones I've had recently, but I want decent sized ones that I feel like I can sink my teeth into. And, she isn't like that. And so, which is good because I don't need her to be, but some people are just what they want is that they want that, security and,
But I think it's different. Like I kind of look at my life in multiple different facets. It's like, what I do during the day affects, all the people I care about around me, but where I choose to have that discomfort or that change, or I call it like the state of flux. Like, we have a plan, but as soon as a plan gets written, it's likely it's changed. And so having, things that are outside your day to day, like in the office, that are kind of stable and balanced is really important to me. Like versus having just everything chaotic or everything in a state of flux and moving around. So, I get enough change or uncertainty during the day to day, then I don't want that at home, or I don't want that in what I do in my spare time.
Yeah, right. I just have chaos everywhere. That's how I like to run things. It's just like in a sprint at all. Yeah. But I do think that that's not so much my natural state, more like something that I've kind of acclimatized to. I'm just like
the norm.
But it's really funny. I think maybe like even with having Archie now, like I'm probably the most drawn towards a little bit of consistency that I've been in a long time. The hard thing is then you throw like a baby in the mix. They're the least consistent thing on the planet.
Oh, God.
There's no no rhyme or rhythm. I was just talking to Jim before, and she's like, "Yeah, Archie's going to sleep at 6 o'clock tonight. He was like 8 o'clock last night." And it's just like they're just all over the show. So at least that scratches my itch. I don't mind getting up at 4 a.m. and hang out with them for an hour or whatever. I'm like, this is just a part of the
I guess that's something I have to look forward to.
It's the best thing. You think challenges at work are hard. That's a whole nother.
It's incredible, and it's something that I think as I've matured, I probably have a greater appreciation of. Just because someone's acting the way they are between you and them in a professional standpoint, and you're like, man, they're kind of off today. You just have no idea what's going on, like at home, or like that's caused that, and like whether they've got kids, is it parents passing, like whatever's going on. It's like, man, there's some maturity that I've gained, like from in early 20s, where you're just like, guns are blazing, basically.
Some people make it the whole way through their life without ever having that realization, though. That's I think probably the realization that I had is that having kids is harder than I'd ever realized. And so every time I'd been talking to someone about some sort of physical challenge or the amount that I work or whatever, and they're like, "Oh, wait till you have kids," I kind of in my head was like pussy. But now that I'm there, I'm like, nah, they were dead on. Like they were bang on. And like I never would say it to someone. I just sort of was like, nah, I'd be fine with that. It's pretty hectic. You can manage, but there's a pretty heavy acclimatization point that you got to go through. But I think a lot of people go through their whole life without ever achieving that level of emotional intelligence where you can consider someone's outcomes. It's really challenging, or consider someone's position, sorry. It's really challenging to have a conversation with someone, though, who doesn't think like that when you think like that, because often you'll find they speak in such absolutes, like you, and you're kind of like, can you please just see both sides of this with me? Because I'm seeing yours and mine, but you're not seeing mine, and so it can be so hard.
I think perspective is really important, especially when you're trying to sell a service or get people to understand, whatever goods or service you're selling, or wanting to have them kind of buy into your narrative or idea with it, because like all people want to do is just make themselves look like they care about number one the most. It's just what it is,
including everyone else,
and that's perfectly fine. There's nothing wrong with that, especially in like a business context. From a corporate environment, we're working with those people every day, having meetings, helping them make it look easy so then they can make themselves look good at work. And so we're basically bringing them this benefit program that's on a platter. It's like, hey, you're just going to have to click a few buttons and basically your employees are going to absolutely love you.
You're a hero.
You're going to be a hero to them, and all you're going to do, and they're like, oh, we're having to put a proposal together. 1 minute later, I'm like, this is the proposal that's worked for 90% of the other people, just adapt it to what you've got. They're like, man, you reply quick. Like, how did you know that I needed that? And I was like, over 1,000 companies, we've understood what people need at what point. And like these barriers that they put up, it's like we're talking to the same people in every single business, and we know the challenges that they're going to go against. And we're like, how do we make them look good? Because when they look good, it's going to make us look good. If we just focus on the customer looking good, they're going to want to work with us anyway.
So you're on the forefront of that. You do all the sales, is that right?
Yeah, definitely. It's been really nice actually. Like we've got a team now, and there's a growth manager who's actually heading up. Cool. I guess maybe the majority of the sales at the moment, which has been really nice to offload or like hand over that. I still get involved with some of the bigger corporates, and basically there's a pipeline that I had already developed of 700-800 companies that we're working our way through, and the lead time on those could be like 6 to 18 months. So we're still nursing those through, but now all of a sudden we've got another team member coming on board. His pipeline is 400 or 500 employers already, and so now starting to like supplement both of them. So it's been really nice to maybe step away a little bit more from just like, hey, the only thing that's going to allow Workride to grow is actually having customers or employers on board to allow their employees to have access to this. And now what I'm able to do is kind of say, I'm still involved with the sales strategically and helping out with like the really tough questions, because as someone has to be upskilled and go through that information and experience, they just don't have all the answers straight away, and almost they have to see monkey do or monkey see, monkey do to understand like what resonates really well. And so, we've got a team member that helps with that now, which is just absolutely ace, man. Like, he's just absolute champion.
And because they can obviously focus 100% of their time on it, as opposed to you might be able to give it 20 or something.
Yeah, well, you're balancing everything. You have to do a little bit of everything, and that's probably something that like a small business, you don't realize how many things has to be done. And like, so if there's 2 of you, it's everything's spread out by 2. There's 3 again, and so on and so forth. And all of a sudden, the more and more people you have, the more and more, call it niche, that your kind of role or job can be, or maybe you're overseeing everything. So it's been really nice to kind of step away from, cranking the handle there with kind of monotonous tasks, which, is there better value for your time? Yes and no. And we're doing a huge amount with like automations and AI to just like leverage someone's time so much at the moment, which is so cool. And from that, it's like the output. You still get the output that you want. You're still banking meetings. You're still getting in there and doing that high value work, but you're not having to like dive in and just send cold emails. We've got a machine basically doing that at the moment and tailoring that specifically to people and companies and their needs. So it's it's definitely just using what we've seen is we're using tools now, but I'm able to step away from that and kind of start helping create those tools or getting the team to create those now.
Yeah, nice. How big's your team?
So we've got a team of 4.
Yeah, cool.
But that's like not including like professional services, like our legal team, like our bookkeeper, accountant, and those sorts of things as well. Yeah, cool. But a core team of 4 full time. Yeah. That involves like someone tech, like business ops, growth, marketing, sales, support, and everything in between those.
Yeah, cool.
It's small team but massive output. Yeah. I think if we look at what we were doing a few years ago prior to actually really implementing some of like the AI tools or automations available to us, and what we're doing right now, we're getting an output of, I reckon, 10 plus people. It's like actually incredible the output. And we're just spending time on high value work. Like we're real passionate about having high value employees so they do high value work, and using the tools, giving them to set up for success so they can just crank out the work and make it easy, make it fun, because success is fun. If you're winning, people want to be on the winning team. So like that's what drives us, is making sure we're a winning team and we are succeeding, and just basically providing whatever's needed, tools and built-in tools with our platform. So yeah, it's pretty cool, and I just think we always joke about it. We're looking into like agents and agentic stuff at the moment, and it's like we can see it. Like there's tasks that we do, and like there's no reason why, and we're already automating half of it. It's like soon it's going to be that whole thing's going to be automated, and then what's the next step? Do we have like some sort of like human interaction that's just a click of the button? So instead of a 10-15 minute task, it's a click of the button. And you think on the scale at which we're doing it, it's like New Zealand's only a certain size market. How many employers can we talk to get Workride in front of? In what way? So it's pretty exciting, I think.
Yeah. We're sitting on like the edge of what will be such a transitional time, and I don't think the average person gets the rate at which AI is moving. No. Like we launched Your Marketer, which is like an AI. It's I suppose the end goal is like a full agency that's just agents. Like that's probably where we want it to wind up. I think that the reality of having something like that exists is that it's a while away.
Yeah.
But I still think it's closer than people realize. Like, in 10 years, it's not 10 years away.
I don't think so.
And will it be the same as dealing with humans? That's probably even further away. But I think for like, you look at the average small business in New Zealand, for example, 90% of businesses in New Zealand have less than 5 employees.
Yep.
Like that's, and they aren't all AI savvy and leveraging their people. They're just small. Like that's why they're, and that's awesome. But like that person then can't come in and pay an agency fee and get them, like it's just too much money. It doesn't 100%. Make any sense. And some of them even like, if they were really risk adverse and wanted to go for it still wouldn't be the right thing for them to do. But if they could get access to 80% of that product for 5% of the cost, that is a good exchange, because all of a sudden they can start playing that game without the risk and that sort of thing. So
like I can kind of foresee, especially how fast things are moving at the moment. Like we always say it in our team whenever like there's a new tool that comes out, or like recently Google I/O. Do you watch that event?
No, I didn't.
I'll have to send it to you after.
Yeah,
it's actually shocking. It's like it was funny. I was in bed watching it, and I was just like saying, "No way!" And my partner's like, "What?" And I was like, I'm watching an AI tech event right now. And then I started showing her it, and she's like, "Is that real?" And I'm like, yeah. And like this exists, and it's just like this incredible thing. And I'm so excited to use all the tools, because I'm excited to use it. And so if I'm a user of that tool, I'm going to be using those tools, higher output for us. But then you think, who's going to be consuming that? And I think there's going to be a really clear separation of those that use that to like elevate their business and basically race away from competition, because there's only a certain amount of time before, the competition can only survive a certain amount of time if you don't get market share. And so if there's businesses racing away from competition because other businesses aren't like adopting these technologies and basically reducing cost or increasing output, whatever you want to look at it, there's just going to be, it's all going to migrate to only a few real dominant players in certain industry eventually. And it's just like, man, this is happening really soon. This is happening now.
And I think that's terrifying unless you're just real game for it. I think that's probably, and that's where I've kind of landed with this agency thing, is I look at the overall agency landscape and I go like, right, this is going to look real different in 3 years. Like, and I look at other marketing areas and I go, it's probably going to follow more of a sort of like them. Like if you look at radio, for example, there's sort of 2 to 3 main players across the country. And I'm like, there's every chance that's where digital winds up at some point in time. And so instead of going like, oh God, that's terrifying, you go, what do I have to be one of those 2 or 3? And then you go like, okay, so what would leverage us against AI? And I'm like, super high touch, super high human interaction, super high like engagement with accounts and things like that. And just so much brilliance across humans that spend so much time on the accounts, but still enough so the business is profitable. That you couldn't even see how a AI anything could replace that person and how good they are. So then it's like, oh, how good can you make your delivery staff and how many of them can you hire and still run a profitable business. Like that becomes the two equations. Whereas I think people right now who are looking at the AI thing is like, and then we're also playing the complete opposite game at the same time. How do we do it with no humans at all? So we've kind of got like leverage points on both sides, and they're feeding each other with like opportunities and information and that sort of thing. But I love the idea of just trying to figure out how we can just create a product that is notably different. Like we were talking about funnels before, and how we're doing a lot of our strategic stuff is like, they're hard to set up. So how do you get to an environment where every client has one? And like every client has professional video that someone goes out and shoots with them, and every client has landing pages, and every client has this, all these tasks that are like technically so challenging to fulfill. Some of it's going to involve AI obviously and leverage. And then when you gain that leverage, where do you put that time? And is it extra margin, or is it an opportunity to add more value? And trying to make those decisions is really interesting.
Like I agree with a lot of that, but I always revert back to like, what's the problem that we're trying to solve? Like, and from a client perspective, it's like, you know, I have a problem. Do you have the thing that's either solves that or makes it easy for me to solve that? And I think what we're going to see, especially with like these tools that are coming online, especially in potentially marketing, and this is your wheelhouse. I know maybe a little bit to be dangerous, but like, this is your wheelhouse. You know, what happens when the tools are just that good to you click a button and like they're basically getting there. And like we've seen it with, you know, just with our ads, when there's a certain time of year, all the, call it basically the bike shops advertise to people that are interested in cycling. We also advertise to that. And so when there's like a Easter sale come up, we all of a sudden see ads that are just like automatically generated from Meta. And like the bike shops just clicked a button probably, and they've just like taken those products and bundle it into an ad, and all of a sudden
category ones.
Exactly. It's like, what happens when there's that much noise in the market? How do you kind of separate yourself out from that? And is what you're providing the solution to that, or now do you have to look at other mediums?
I think it's the answer is human. In an environment where it's becoming so easy, and people think this is a dramatic step, but it's been gradually getting closer and closer. Like even if you look at say a platform like Canva and the impact that had on marketing, where you go, previously there was a period of time where I had 3 full-time graphic designers that worked in this business just producing ad creatives. That was all they did. And so you go like, but now we have Canva, or we use Canva more widely. I started out with Canva because I'm not a graphic designer, and when it was me and I was just doing all the stuff, I kind of needed it. But then we got all cool and professional, and so we started using Adobe, and I couldn't survive 3 minutes in Adobe. I couldn't do anything. I couldn't drag text around in it. Like it's so much harder than Canva. Now we kind of have gone back there because we're like, actually, it doesn't really make that big of a difference. So we, you know, that might mean 2 extra people on the ads team, or an extra person here, or whatever it is. We'll go down that route. This has like been way more of a gradual thing, I think we realized. And so what we're thinking, and every chance I'm wrong, but what I'm betting on is that being the most human is actually the leverage for digital simple. And then I think being the highest value for money, most efficient, is the answer for your marketer. And so I want to play the 2 full ends of the spectrum. I don't want to sit in the middle under any circumstances, because I think the middle is where you die. I think that if you can have a $50 agency in your pocket, $50 a month, that's a compelling offer. And I think if you can be unreasonably high touch and just run the best campaigns, just be innovative, sort of set the standard for how people run stuff. Because remember, AI is learning off things, you know. It's not, and maybe it will get to this point, but it's not currently independently creating these concepts. And so AI couldn't have told us to start using a landing page software so we could offer all of our clients landing pages, whereas previously none of them were able to do it. It couldn't have convinced me to hire 2 full-time videographers so I can just pump video out at unreasonable volumes, and you know, all that sort of thing. I think we just lean on being more human, more innovative. There's a word, because I'm kind of establishing our like positioning statement and stuff like that. And a word that I came up today that I really liked was like non-conformist. Was like refusing to just do what is generally believed. And that's probably not the quite word we'll land on, but the message is like not being what people expect you to be, and not following what someone defines as best practice. And I think that summarizes a lot of what you guys have done really well. Is, you know, the model was sell the bikes, and you're like, nah, there's a way here that's, you know, and I think people like that.
It's the classic, like, you know, when people say that's a good idea, it's like, that was a good idea 2 years ago, 3 years ago, to actually get it to that stage where all of a sudden you've discovered that business or that product, and you're like, to actually get to that stage, like, the idea's already gone, mate. Like, it's already down the road. It's like the classic, you know, if you start hearing people talk about, like, if you hear your nan talk about crypto, you're like,
probably not time
to sell. time to sell. And, you know, if people start thinking, I might build a few property developments, you're like,
probably not time.
Probably not. Yeah. You're like, this is kind of weird. And so, like, you know, we're a firm believer, like, we're building this business in a really challenging market at the moment. Yeah. You know, these businesses that have the key buzzword, man, we hear it every day, transformation. Yeah. Effectively what they're saying is redundancies. Yeah. You know, they're going through these basically rearranging their businesses. And this is from the biggest companies in New Zealand to the smallest businesses. And they're saying, hey, like, there's just that much uncertainty at the moment. We're going through a really challenging economic market. We don't know, we don't have consistency with revenue coming in. And so to actually add more benefits on when we're actually potentially having to remove staff, it's just confusing for a workplace. And so, you know, we've had to nurse and kind of support those businesses through. We've got a nice, strong pipeline. They know we're here. We engage with them every, you know, month, 2 months, just say new updates, keep sharing good stories about them, because we know when the time comes, they'll be like, we're ready now. Yeah. Like, we had an engineering company in Christchurch, about 100-person team, you know, back in July 2023. They're like, really good idea, but man, this is a tough market. Yeah. You know, we're definitely coming on board, but, you know, when the time's right, the time's right. You know, we've probably caught up with them 4 or 5 times, same sort of thing, but it's just like nursing them all the way through, and they signed yesterday type thing. Yeah. Out of nowhere, it was
I love those deals,
like
though,
3 months maybe without touching base. We're about to like reach out in this month, and all of a sudden they're just like, hey, directors all signed, here's your agreement type thing. Yeah, nice. Fantastic, on board. The team's taking up the benefits straight away. So cool. It's just, you know, we are building in a really challenging market, and when market conditions improve, you know, all of a sudden, you know, both from a consumer point of view, with actually employees wanting bikes, and they will actually be like, oh, now maybe we can actually go out and actually take up a bike rather than not sacrifice some of our salary for it. And other businesses will be like, okay, now's a really good time. And so when that time comes, you know, be it maybe next year, the year after, who knows when that's going to be, you know, we're going to have thousands of businesses using our platform. And if you think of a business as a business leader, you know, if you had, you know, we are the leading provider of this, but if you had 1 or 2, we have no doubt competitors are going to come. You know, they're not going to be as big as us, but if you had multiple different offerings, they are all free. They basically give you the same output, legally structured. They might be slightly different, but you don't have the time to look into that.
Or you don't even get what it means anyway.
You don't, exactly. Yeah. You're like, why? But if you see one's got 2,500 employers using it, and others don't disclose, or they look kind of like the Temu version, or just like not maybe as robust, don't have the logos or the brands. You know, as a business leader, like, what one are you going to choose? It's like, it's a no-brainer, right? Yeah.
We think the same. Yeah. Like that spotting the opportunity when everyone else is like battening down. Like, our brains work really similarly. Yeah. I'm all in on product at the moment, in a time where like every bit of me just wants to go sell as much as I can and like drive revenue and all those things. Like, if I nail the product, if I build something better than what is there, and then I can take that, we can solve the churn, we can do those things, we can. It's hard right now. Yeah, you can, like, everyone can say it's not, everyone can say it is. I think there are people that are finding it more challenging than others, but it's hard out there right now. If you can grow and get better in an environment like this, at some point in time, it's gonna open up. Oh yeah, and like, you don't need much. Like, you need 10% more consumer confidence, and you are on. That's that, because it's like that you lose so many on that last hurdle. Yeah. It's just that, totally. I'm just worried about how this looks, or I'm worried about this. Or like, you lose so many deals just there. It's almost just there. So just to try to learn now and get better now, it'll reap rewards.
100%. And like, we know statistically, we've got a model that says, look, we're just going for growth of employers. Like how many employees can we get access to, or at least have access to this program? Hey, there might be some short-term, pain in terms of, hey, why isn't there the uptake? Why isn't there uptake? Man, we're in this recession. Like we're in a really challenging market. Like things are expensive. People say inflation's under control. Inflation's under control, but it's still going up. It's not like prices are going down. And that's the challenging thing. It's like if we look at, probably just my food shop, I reckon in the last year, 20+% easily. And so that's not going to
probably more, right? Like I'd hate supermarkets. Like before Jen moved in, there was a period of time where I didn't cook for 6 months. Like I hate supermarkets. I hate the whole process. I actually quite enjoy cooking, but I just view the whole thing as being so inefficient. It just drives me mental. And like I feel like I can't walk into the supermarket and spend less than $100. Like even if I'm just grabbing a couple of things, it's like $100 minimum cost of entry. It feels like at the moment. Whereas I feel like I used to go there and spend like $8. Like it was so different. And then you think about it and you're like, how on earth does the average income family in New Zealand afford this? Plus a mortgage, plus
unbelievable.
It just doesn't make any sense. Yeah,
and I think it will get to a point where maybe there's further stability. Maybe income or the average income does start to increase on basically overheads, and so there's a little bit more comfort that can be had by a large majority of Kiwis, and so. If we have a bigger employee pool that has access to Workride as a benefit, they haven't taken it up yet, but all of a sudden when those conditions start to turn, exactly what you're saying, all of a sudden they're like, actually, I want to save on my commute. And actually, we do have a little bit more expendable income at the moment. This is actually something that I should do, and now's the time to do it. And then all of a sudden there's that rush, and like we've got the infrastructure, we've got the rails, it's there to be used.
Have you ever tried messaging based around spend your weekly gas bill on a bike or anything? Do you kind of get what I'm getting at? You know how people use for a price of a coffee a day analogy? Because I wonder if when you're thinking about it, let's say that a person earns $80,000 a year, going, I'll buy you this $5,000 bike and you'll make $75,000 over the next year. They might currently go, well, I couldn't earn $75,000 a year because I need that $100 a week. But if you then went and you probably spend X amount of dollars on gas, and that's post-tax, which is actually costing you $150 or $200 a week. And so if you saved that and you got a bike and you bike to work, you're going to be healthier, you're going to get exercise in, and you're going to have more money. Helping them to understand that might be interesting, because salary sacrifice, I suppose, is just like a scary word.
Sacrifice.
Yeah.
You gotta call it what it is, though.
For sure.
And it's a scary word because the level of understanding isn't there in New Zealand, and so we've had to go out and educate the market on what a salary sacrifice is, and educating the market in a way that's good stewards of this, because we've created this market, right?
You have responsibility.
We have responsibility. We want to make sure there's no surprises, it's transparent. People understand that they're amending their employment agreement to say, don't provide me with all this cash salary, basically exactly reduce that and provide me with a bike benefit as well. But if you're getting a pay rise, things like KiwiSaver and those sorts of things are affected. If you've got a pay cut, also, if you reduce your pay, those things are also affected. So making sure that people understand that there's information that they can read and they understand, and what they're entering into is obviously very net positive, but making sure people fully understand what they're doing.
Cool. Hey, we're kind of chasing towards the tail end of this episode. This has been really good, by the way. First podcast. Who would have thought?
Rambling on.
You've been exceptional. Is there any kind of closing notes or anything that sort of jumped up through this conversation that you'd like to talk about or anything like that?
I think one thing that I'm truly really passionate about is just efficiency. And what we're seeing across the market is small teams doing high impact big things. And we're engaged with over 1,000 employers, right? We have a customer success program that makes sure that some of New Zealand's largest businesses, they think we're a team of 20 or 30 people, and we're just delivering a massive output for the team. And I guess it's getting the right people on the bus, and then setting that bus trajectory. And one thing is just how efficient can we get? and what tools are available to do that. And like, we don't need a big team to be successful. We need the right team to be successful, to be efficient. So
I like that a lot. I think that's I mean, I'm guilty of like going big to go big.
But there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, but also like there kind of is, because then it winds up real hard, right?
Yeah.
Like, and you wind up in a position where you kind of got to revisit the way you do things often as a result, or you know, like there's. I don't think there's a huge amount of leverage being like a big corporation when you compare it to the way that you can be dynamic and effective as a small team.
Yeah.
And so even if your business grows bigger from like a staffing perspective, you don't have to let go of that attitude. That's been my learning over the last 6 months is like be small, nimble, fighting weight, ready to go. Like that is cool.
100%.
Yeah.
I imagine, and I always like, man, it's just the brain that I've got. It's like, what are those business ideas that are just floating around? Like you just see and you have a problem, you're like, man, if I'm having this problem, what else is? Yeah. And like in these massive organizations that we're talking to, like these are 1,000-person teams that, you know, some of the meetings that we have, there's 8 people on that call. Yeah. And we're like, we could probably estimate all the salaries. Like that call just cost that organization $5,000. Yeah. We just needed to talk to a decision maker and summarize that. Yeah. I was like, is there like with what Dojo in America did with the government? I don't endorse or anything like that. But is there that almost solution for these larger organizations where it's like, hey, you know, you don't have to let go of staff, but here is where there's efficiencies. Here's where there's potential areas of improvement where tools can be implemented to support your team to get more output. Because it's just like you see it when you're in a big team, like meetings for the sake of meetings. Yeah. Like, why is there a meeting? Like, why are you having that? Like, why was there 8 people on that call? Yeah. Like, and they all wanted to be there, and I think it's important for them to be there. But could I have provided more information up front? Could they have submitted information prior to answer their questions? Because, you know, one person on that call asked the question that's relevant to them, and were they needed to be there for the next 30 minutes or not? It's like that efficiency there is like, why?
Even the wastage across a team my size would just make you feel sick. Like, and then I've got mates who've done billions in sales, and like the wastage, like one of them, he's like, realistically, like 1% would just be fair. Like if we had 1% wastage, and he's like, I think it would be worse than that. But if we had 1% wastage, that's just what it is. That's just how it works. And he's like, but 1% is $10 million. Yeah. Like when you're playing at a scale like that, and that's 1%, and it could be 5, it could be 10. You just don't know. You just don't know. Yeah. It is just, and that's something that I like, and I want to continue to push my business in a direction where we operate the way that you operate. Is that like small, nimble, aggressive, but also across a team that's the same size, but just the same mentality. And as I'm sort of getting more of a chance to talk to people and more of that, like the real game is real interesting as well. As you mentioned that mission and kind of pulling people into it. They're like, I can get after that. Is, you know, you just need to have that conversation with them. Cool.
Yeah, and I think like you'll find those people that are those sorts of players. Yeah. And they'll find their niche. And then maybe you find those people that maybe aren't game with that exact thing. But you provide them with another opportunity that is like, hey, here's an opportunity to be game. Like, you know, is this something that you want to do? And, you know, if they don't start adapting to the new tools or the things that are available, like, how do they remain relevant or valuable to the business, especially when, you know, these tools that could be potentially amplifying their efforts, not removing them completely. I still think business is done between people. Yeah. You know, you're still going to have that face-to-face. I reckon there's going to be a world where, you know, there'll be like an AI business that generates millions of dollars that actually has no one running. Imagine that. Like, like cool, setup. Yeah, it'd be pretty wild to think just as an experiment. But business is done between, especially in New Zealand, we're still behind the 8 ball, 100%. And business is built on relationships. Yeah. And I think like that relationship, no matter what you're doing, New Zealand's so small. Like, it's so funny. Like you talk to a friend and you're like, oh, I heard that you're talking to this company. I'm like, how do you know that we're talking to that company? Yeah. Oh, this person works there, and they said that they're looking into it at the moment, looking into Workride at the moment. And so, no matter what, like business is done between people, I think, in the short term in New Zealand, but it's like, how do you make that experience like absolutely awesome and just providing value out the gate for them?
Yeah, nice. Love it. What an epic sort of closing note, I suppose. Hey, if people have listened to what you've said, they're interested in what you're up to, or they want to keep up with your journey or anything like that, where should they find you?
Yeah, jump on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
Follow me or connect with me. More than happy. I'll respond to messages. Yeah, it's a great way to just keep in touch. Yeah, cool. I try to post a little bit. I'm not a wounder. I don't post every day, but nice. There's a place for it. Yeah,
I promise. I've tested the posting every day thing. It's not the answer. Right? It's not the answer. It was the most like I don't know how you find LinkedIn. This is off topic, but I hate it so much at the moment. I hate it so much.
I go on post off.
It's such a powerful platform, and it just drives me mental that it works so well. But all the content I see is just the same, like line, space, line, space, line. But I could write you a template for how to put a post on LinkedIn that performs well. It's like put vague hook that shows self-awareness and a lesson.
See more.
Click see more. Have a body of text that sort of doesn't mean anything but kind of explains your problem a bit more, kind of half solve it. Put a photo that's unrelated.
Have a look in there. Like the algorithm's super powerful, and I like, it's one of those things that competition is using it or other people are using it. I think I saw a stat that over 90% or 87% of people on LinkedIn don't post every week or once a month. And so there's a whole lot of content consumers out there. And if you, like one thing I've been doing after every meeting now, if it was a really good meeting, I'll connect with every single person in that meeting, especially if we actually had dialogue. I'm typically talking during those meetings, so that's normal. And the good thing about it is every time I post once a week is the goal at the moment. Which is just something that I'm trying to keep steady, see what happens. Again, do lots of little tests, see if there's any value in it, continue if there is. It means that once I connect with those people, I post these good news stories or these things that are providing more value, new information to these people that we're talking to on email. They're getting it reinforced like, hey, this is a winning team. This is something that other people are using. There's good buy-in from it. So testing it out. Again, I don't like it. But again, it's something that we have to, it's a small team, so we have to do it.
And sorry, I mean, if I came across before, I hate LinkedIn. I love LinkedIn because it's so powerful, but it just I'm not a big fan of the state of the content there at the moment. It's pretty challenging. And I know I'm a part of the problem. I know that I'm a part of the problem because I know how it works. I know how to do posts that go far.
But it will change, I reckon.
I think so.
I think it's going to change. People are going to just see, and it's going to like automatically like cull out all that AI garbage, and it's just real. Like almost, if you wrote a post, it's like this was done by AI. You're not allowed to post. You have to have it real. Like how cool would that be?
And the movement towards people who document. I think will be the big thing. That's the key with LinkedIn.
True.
I want to start like especially coming off the back of this, we've had quite a tough 6 months here, and we're really like through the bottom and coming back out the other side. And I kind of was thinking about how I position it around like maybe even creating like a video series or like something.
A journey.
Yeah, and like sort of like a weekly something that kind of updates and shows what we're up to as we're moving through it, and like do some cool stuff. Like we'll probably rebrand through this next period and like showing like that whole process, but with like all this work we're doing blurred out. So people are kind of like waiting to see the next and like do some 100%. Cool journey stuff rather than just like, here's this created post for essentially your amusement and engagement. Totally. Making it a bit more raw and unfiltered.
100%. Yeah, and a little bit off topic, but there's some really good success stories of sharing your journey with that. I think there's a company over in the US, and they started basically at $1 of rev, and they're public financials basically, and they've gone through to like 5 million of rev, and it's just like selling a product, and he's just like doing 2 hours a week on this business, and he's just sharing the journey, and people are like awaiting for the quarterly updates for the results and stuff because everyone's like so invested into like this business that sells this silly little product, and somehow they're just doing like crazy kind of results from it, and you're like, man, that would be kind of a cool hack or like a cool game to play.
Document it. Cool, man. Hey, well, if you've enjoyed this and you've like what Aidan has to say, make sure you go check him out on LinkedIn. I really appreciate your time. This has been really enjoyable.
Thanks.
How was your first podcast episode?
I think I rambled a bit.
Nah, you smashed it. You were, I'll listen back, but it felt pretty engaging when I was sitting here talking.
I thought so.
Yeah,
I think so.
Cool, man. Hey, if you've listened this far, make sure you go check Aidan out on LinkedIn. Check us out on YouTube if you're on Spotify if you're on YouTube. Follow us on all the platforms, and we will see you on the next one. Thanks again, Aidan.
Awesome.